I would like to start this video with a disclaimer. I would like to start that disclaimer with another disclaimer. That second disclaimer is to inform you, the viewer, that the original disclaimer is not aimed towards you. It's more for me. The original disclaimer is to state that this video is probably not what you might be expecting, nor is it like any of the other content that I have made thus far. Normally the videos that I make have had to do with the game from my childhood as its central topic. I would share some experiences around the game as well as observations and explanations for aspects of the game that I particularly enjoyed. From the get-go, this video deviates from that structure for two reasons. The first is that the subject of today, F-Zero GX for the Nintendo GameCube, is not a game from my childhood. Released on July 25th, 2003, just a few days after my 11th birthday, F-Zero GX must have just somehow slipped under my radar. There is no doubt that at that time I was spending multiple all days and all nights on my precious Nintendo GameCube. But given the time frame, I was probably still busy playing Super Mario Sunshine. Looking at it with hindsight, the exclusion of this pernicious racing purgatory might be construed as either a blessing or a curse. The second deviation in this video is that I'm making this content for someone in particular. Normally when I make a video, I try to keep a broad scope of audiences in mind. I never know who my content will resonate with, and I'd rather be more inclusive than exclusive. Just this once though, please indulge me, as I would like to speak directly to one person. You know who you are. You also know what you got me into, and I gotta say, how dare you? How dare you subject me to racing jank of this magnitude? How dare you dip my toe in the miasma that is the F-Zero story? And how dare you have the wool ripped from my eyes? More so than anything, my friend really just wants to see me get through this game's 9 grueling story missions, but I feel like there is so much more to talk about before we arrive at that foregone conclusion. So without further ado, let's jump into the meat of this video. F-Zero GX has succeeded in providing me a wholly novel, unique, and interesting form of gameplay, is what I would like to say if that were actually the case. Unfortunately for F-Zero GX, and as mentioned previously, I did not play F-Zero GX upon its release. Even worse, since the release of F-Zero GX and my having streamed my blind first-time experience with the game over on Twitch, I have played Forza Horizon, Burnout, Need for Speed, Split Second, Hot Wheels Unleashed, Trackmania, and most important of all, I have played Mario Kart 8. Yahoo! Playing F-Zero GX after having played all of those titles feels like visiting the grave of a much beloved and long deceased grandparent of a large family after having just been invited to their Thanksgiving dinner. As these grandchildren look forlornly upon the grave of their much beloved ancestor, each of their faces shines clearly with the inherited genealogy of dearest Grandpa F-Zero. It would be not only disrespectful, but also ignorant and slightly dishonest of anyone to say that one cannot see the influences and ramifications of F-Zero GX in the racing genre as a whole. F-Zero GX provides exhilarating moment-to-moment action at a breakneck speed. The player must contend with winding and physics-defying tracks in 3D space, while also navigating through and often fighting against the other racers on the track. From these two simple sentences can I see the seeds of salvation. In Forza Horizon and Split Second, I feel the exhilarating moment-to-moment action that F-Zero GX so effortlessly exudes. In Trackmania and Hot Wheels Unleashed, I drive the winding and physics-defying paths that had been originally forged by F-Zero. In Burnout and Need for Speed, I navigate around and fight against my fellow racers, just as F-Zero GX had always wanted me to do. Lastly, in Mario Kart 8, I see everything that F-Zero GX ever was. There are 3D space winding and physics-defying tracks. Half of the game is about interaction and interruption of your fellow racer. Shoot, there's even F-Zero tracks in the game. Honestly, the commercial success of Mario Kart 8 is probably why we haven't seen an F-Zero game in years. Yahoo! I feel like at this point I should clarify that I'm not trying to give F-Zero GX all of the racing progeny credit in the world. I am very aware that there were racing games long before F-Zero GX was ever released. However, observing the evolution of the F-Zero series and then comparing that to the evolution of the action racing game genre as a whole, it is so clear to me how influential F-Zero is, and I never seem to see anybody pay it mind. Actually, you know, that's not entirely true. Did you know that when John Romero and John Carmack were both being interviewed about their process of making the original Doom, they specifically mentioned that they would take breaks in between working sessions to play the original F-Zero on Super Nintendo? And I think that's really special. On that note, I think it's worth mentioning how much F-Zero has evolved from its SNES incarnation to the Nintendo GameCube. I'm gonna be real with you, I was not too impressed with F-Zero on SNES. I can't really think of any reason the original F-Zero for SNES would stand out amongst its peers. I mean, the SNES was a treasure trove of fun, cute, quirky little racing games. Personally, my favorite racing game for that system was Top Gear 2. Maybe I'll make a video about that game one day. F-Zero GX stands out on the GameCube, especially to me personally, thanks to the copious amounts of jank that the game positively overflows with. I mean, if you want to spend a really interesting 39 minutes and 54 seconds, I highly recommend looking up an F-Zero GX speedrun on YouTube. You will not be disappointed. The whole game is filled with broken controls, CPU shenanigans, physics exploits, you name it, F-Zero GX has got it. Before I started playing the game, I was told, or more like warned, that it was lovingly referred to as the Super Smash Bros. Melee of racing games. Now I could not think of a more fitting title. I plan to go further into detail when we actually begin discussing my playthrough of the game's campaign, but for now, suffice it to say that F-Zero GX and Super Smash Bros. Melee go hand in hand like grilled cheese sandwiches and cowboy hats. Which is to say that they don't go together at all, but if you look at it from the perspective of a moron, you might be able to glimpse the invisible bindings which intertwines thee. What I'm trying to say here is that Captain Falcon is featured as a playable character in Super Smash Bros. And he has a gun. Did you ever notice that? Your guess is as good as mine as to what he uses it for. He's supposedly a bounty hunter, though I've never actually seen him hunt any bounties. Matter of fact, the whole F-Zero canon is a fresh can of spaghetti waiting to be unraveled. Let's talk about that for a bit before we get to my playthrough. The original F-Zero for the Super Nintendo was born in a time where the instruction manuals for video games were integral to the experience. Aside from telling you how to play the game, often they included bits of story, or at the very least, laid the setting for what was about to happen in your precious new video game. I bring this little facet of video game history up because 1. I am really upset that video games don't come with instruction manuals anymore, and 2. I got F-Zero for the SNES secondhand. I don't quite remember if it was a garage sale or maybe a pawn shop, but I do know that my copy of F-Zero was purchased with my allowance money and without an instruction manual. My lack of access to any sort of story, setting explanation, or even character introduction left me to experience the game at best incompletely. Through no fault of the game itself, my enjoyment had been gimped and experience sullied. F-Zero is a great game and all, but there's only so many times you can spam Time Attack on Big Blue to hear those bangin' tunes. Unlike F-Zero GX, F-Zero for the SNES does not feature a story mode. This really sucks, because the story in F-Zero is incredibly interesting considering that all you do in-game is drive car fast. Apparently though, Captain Falcon was a bounty hunter even in this earliest installation. The aforementioned manual came with an 8-page comic that accounts several bounty hunting missions alongside Captain Falcon, and holy crap, he's actually using his gun. Nowadays, F-Zero is a multimedia franchise with manga spin-offs, and it's even got its own anime. I tried to go through the story of all the games and the story of the anime, and I don't think they're actually related. It seems like the canon of the games deviates from the canon of the show pretty heavily. I don't want this video to go on any longer than it needs to, but my goodness, we haven't even gotten to my playthrough yet. So shout me out in the comments if you're intimately familiar with the F-Zero mythos and how it all ties together. I would love to learn. For the time being, I believe it's most appropriate now to start discussing the story of F-Zero GX itself, and get into my personal playthrough of the campaign. I would like to start off by saying just how counterintuitive actually playing the story of F-Zero GX is. Just from a user interface point of view, y'all have probably heard of things being user-friendly. Well, this is user hostile. Upon completion of a story mission, you must go to the game's shop and purchase the next chapter with tickets. F-Zero GX rewards you with tickets upon story or Grand Prix completion. The amount of tickets you're rewarded is dependent upon the difficulty with which you tackled these challenges. Extra racing missions and customizable car parts are also locked behind ticket purchases. To summarize, if you want to do anything in this video game, you've got to have the tickets. This unavoidably leads to ticket grinding and finding out the optimal ticket acquisition strategy, and this is where the scales fall from my eyes and the truth of F-Zero GX is laid bare before me. Some of the most celebrated video games achieved their acclaim not because of what they were, but rather because of what they became. For instance, take Metal Gear Solid. On its surface, it's an action-adventure stealth game with a penchant for cinematic elements, but now we can appreciate it in actuality for being a groundbreaking psychological action thriller visual novel. Fortnite is marketed as a genre-leading battle royale-style video game, yet its popularity actually comes from it serving as a parasocial virtual third space for an entire generation. Pokémon surfaced as a simplistic monster-catching introduction to role-playing games. The genius, however, lies in its card game deck-building approach to adorable cockfights between enough critters that eventually anyone and everyone can find one that they identify with. The Last of Us is a bombastic display of ludonarrative harmony presented by an all-or-nothing AAA studio. But that game sucks ass. In summary, I went into F-Zero GX for exhilarating, moment-to-moment action racing at a breakneck speed across engaging three-dimensional tracks. Now, I come to you with the revelation that F-Zero GX is actually a brilliantly subliminal racing game abstraction of a Japanese role-playing game. You may call me crazy. You could be forgiven for closing the video on me now after having uttered such nonsense. But homie, if you've stuck around this long, then let's continue to sink some cost together, my friend. Also, please consider subscribing to the channel. It would mean a whole lot to me. F-Zero GX cleverly begins and ends its JRPG abstraction with the implementation of said ticket system. While this form of progression is not inherently unique to F-Zero GX, once you begin to look at the game beyond the sum of its parts, you can easily glimpse the trick. In game design, there is often a balance of player strength versus avatar strength. Player strength refers to the skill that is expected of the person holding the controller. Games introduce mechanics to players and then hone their craft over the course of an entire experience, climaxing in engaging tests of capability. Good examples of player strength heavy games include Celeste, Street Fighter, and Tetris. Avatar strength refers to the capabilities of the in-game representation of the player's acting body. In-game statistical progression usually takes the forefront here, and the player is not asked to perform harder tasks, simply make better decisions. Some examples of games that rely on avatar strength are Final Fantasy, Vampire Survivors, and The Witcher. It most likely goes without saying that avatar strength lends itself greatly to the inherent nature of RPGs, as the RPG was born of the desire to abstract larger-than-life experiences into easily digestible numbers. F-Zero GX has the outward veneer of a racing game which demands heavy player strength-oriented design in order to create engaging feedback. But as the game progresses, your cultivated skills begin to wane as finely crafted AI-controlled speed demons tear you down. As I'm sure that some of you F-Zero GX veterans in the audience can attest, the latter difficulty races feel nigh on impossible to compete in with your vanilla karts. Captain Falcon simply isn't enough. You need more racers. You need to build your own kart. You need to unlock parts. You need to level up. The scales quickly begin to tip from player strength to avatar strength as you start paying attention to racer stats and which ones matter. F-Zero GX also lets you build custom cars that allow you to fine-tune your rig to your personal racing preference. Here we can see the final culmination of the JRPG abstraction come to light. The tickets are your experience points. The custom parts and extra racers are your level ups and equipable gear. You must grind Grand Prix-like dungeons to gain enough experience to make progress in the game. It all comes to a head when you finally consider the story campaign. You do not simply unlock story chapters naturally upon progression. You must purchase them with tickets. Completing a story chapter rewards you with tickets, though it's often not enough tickets to afford the next chapter. Here lies the straw that breaks the falcon's back. F-Zero GX, like the traditional JRPGs of yore, insist that you grind experience points before you are able to progress in the story. Somebody, please, prove me wrong. Make me feel not crazy. Name another not RPG that handles story progression in this manner. Because I have tried to think of one, and I cannot. And to be completely frank, even JRPGs don't implement a hard lock like this. I've seen plenty of people blaze through Paper Mario and Dragon Quest horrendously underleveled just for the fun of it. F-Zero GX boldly goes where no racing game or JRPG has gone before it, all to make a stand, to scream to the heavens that I am here and I should not be ignored. All for just 9 story chapters. And with that, finally, it's time to actually get to my F-Zero campaign playthrough. There's a lot to talk about here considering just how bonkers the story is and how freaking challenging a lot of these missions are. See, it all starts out with the Black Shadow here that's being chased by some demon-looking thing, and this demon-looking thing is pissed.